Okay, let's continue our journey through time at New York. So here we go with the founding of New York. Let's take a listen and a look here. This is my space time traveler AI that I made in the Chat GPT store. So feel free to check it out yourself. Link in the description.
In 1609, the area that would become New York was primarily inhabited by Native American tribes, including the Lenape. The landscape was largely untouched by European influence, featuring dense forests, rivers, lakes, and wetlands. The Lenape lived in well organized communities, using the rich natural resources for hunting, fishing, gathering, and agriculture. They built wigwams and longhouses and cultivated crops such as maize, beans, and squash. In September 1609, the English explorer Henry Hudson, sailing for the Dutch East India Company, arrived in the region on the ship Half Moon. He sailed up what is now the Hudson River, exploring the area and making contact with the indigenous peoples. Hudson's exploration laid the groundwork for future Dutch colonization and the establishment of New Amsterdam. The environment was rich and diverse, with a temperate climate. Wildlife included deer, bears, wolves, beavers, rabbits, and various birds and fish. The area was characterized by its natural beauty and abundance of resources, making it an attractive location for future settlement. Here's a detailed description of the area in 1609. Landscape: dense forests of deciduous and coniferous trees, rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Flora: oak, maple, birch, pine, and spruce trees, grasses, and shrubs. Fauna: deer, bears, wolves, beavers, rabbits, birds, and fish. Human presence: Lenape tribes living in wigwams and longhouses, practicing hunting, fishing, gathering, and agriculture. Exploration: Henry Hudson's arrival and exploration of the Hudson River. This description provides a vivid picture of what the area was like in 1609. If you'd like an image generated after the wait period, please let me know. In 1624, the area that would become New York featured dense forests of deciduous and coniferous trees, with abundant rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Wildlife included deer, bears, wolves, beavers, rabbits, and various birds and fish. The Dutch settlement of New Amsterdam, located at the southern tip of Manhattan Island, included Dutch style houses, farms, and Fort Amsterdam. Native American presence, primarily the Lenape, was still significant, though increasingly influenced by European settlement and trade. The sky was clear with a few clouds, reflecting a period of significant change and interaction between cultures. In 1650, the area that would become New York featured dense forests of deciduous and coniferous trees, with abundant rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Wildlife included deer, bears, wolves, beavers, rabbits, and various birds and fish. The Dutch settlement of New Amsterdam, located at the southern tip of Manhattan Island, had grown into a bustling port town with Dutch style houses, farms, windmills, cobblestone streets, and Fort Amsterdam. Native American presence, primarily the Lenape, was still significant, though increasingly influenced by European settlement and trade. The sky was clear with a few clouds, reflecting a period of growth and interaction between cultures. In 1664, the area that would become New York featured dense forests, rivers, lakes, and wetlands, supporting wildlife such as deer, bears, wolves, beavers, rabbits, and various birds and fish. The settlement of New Amsterdam with Dutch style houses, farms, windmills, cobblestone streets, and Fort Amsterdam was transitioning to English control and being renamed New York. English soldiers marked the change of governance, while Native American presence, particularly the Lenape, continued to be significant. The sky was clear with a few clouds, reflecting a period of change and cultural blending. In 1700, New York featured early urban development at the southern tip of Manhattan Island, with houses, shops, and public buildings in a mix of Dutch and English architectural styles. The streets were narrow and often unpaved. Surrounding the city were forests and farmlands with deciduous and coniferous trees. The Hudson and East Rivers were bustling with ships, reflecting the city's importance as a commercial hub. The population was diverse, including English settlers, Dutch remnants, enslaved Africans, and other European immigrants. Key structures included churches, marketplaces, and the renamed Fort James. The sky was clear with a few clouds, indicating a thriving, growing settlement. In 1776, New York City, located at the southern tip of Manhattan Island, was densely packed with buildings and streets. The city featured British and Dutch colonial style architecture, with key structures like Trinity Church, Fraunces Tavern, and various forts. The Hudson and East Rivers were active with ships, reflecting the city's importance as a commercial hub. The population was diverse, including British loyalists, American patriots, enslaved Africans, and European immigrants. The military presence was significant, with British soldiers and Continental Army activities marking the city's strategic importance during the American Revolutionary War. The sky was clear with a few clouds, capturing a tense and pivotal moment in history. In 1789, New York City, located at the southern tip of Manhattan Island, was densely developed with houses, shops, public buildings, and cobblestone streets. Key structures included Federal Hall, where George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States. The Hudson and East Rivers were busy with ships, reflecting the city's importance as a commercial hub. The population was diverse, including people of European descent, free and enslaved African Americans, and immigrants. The city featured a mix of colonial and early federal architectural styles, with prominent buildings like churches and markets. The sky was clear with a few clouds, capturing a vibrant and historic moment in the city's development. In 1825, New York City was expanding northward from the southern tip of Manhattan Island, with a densely developed landscape featuring residential, commercial, and public buildings. Key structures included City Hall, churches, theaters, and markets. The opening of the Erie Canal was a transformative event, enhancing trade and transportation, with busy ports, warehouses, and markets bustling with activity. The population was diverse, including people of European descent, free and enslaved African Americans, and immigrants from Ireland and Germany. The architecture was a mix of styles, with federal style buildings prominent. Streets were busy with horse drawn carriages and wagons, reflecting a dynamic and rapidly growing city. In 1898, New York City was densely developed with a mix of architectural styles, including early skyscrapers and tenement buildings. Key structures included the Flatiron Building, the Statue of Liberty, Brooklyn Bridge, and Central Park. The population was diverse, with large communities of European immigrants and growing African American neighborhoods. The transportation network featured elevated trains, horse drawn carriages, and the beginnings of the subway system. The city had bustling streets, busy markets, and significant public buildings like the New York Stock Exchange and City Hall. The sky was clear with a few clouds, reflecting a dynamic and rapidly growing metropolis. In 1921, New York City was densely developed with skyscrapers and a mix of residential and commercial buildings. Key structures included the Woolworth Building, Grand Central Terminal, the New York Public Library, and Times Square. The population was diverse, with European immigrants, African Americans, and new immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. The transportation network featured an expanding subway system, automobiles, streetcars, and horse drawn carriages. The streets were bustling with people and activity, reflecting the economic boom of the Roaring Twenties. The sky was clear with a few clouds, capturing the city's vibrant and dynamic atmosphere. In 1931, New York City was densely developed with skyscrapers, including the newly completed Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building, both showcasing Art Deco architecture. The skyline featured a mix of residential, commercial, and public buildings. The population was diverse, with European immigrants, African Americans, and newer immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. The streets were busy with automobiles, streetcars, and pedestrians. Central Park and other green spaces provided recreational areas. Despite the economic hardships of the Great Depression, the city remained vibrant with active cultural scenes in theaters, jazz clubs, and cinemas. The sky was clear with a few clouds, capturing the resilient spirit of the city during this challenging time. In 1945, New York City was densely developed with skyscrapers, including the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building. The skyline featured a mix of residential, commercial, and public buildings. The population was diverse, including European immigrants, African Americans, and newer immigrants. The streets were busy with automobiles, buses, taxis, and pedestrians. Central Park and other green spaces provided recreational areas. There was a sense of post war celebration, with Times Square as a focal point for public gatherings. The city was preparing for the arrival of the United Nations headquarters, reflecting its emerging role as a center for international diplomacy. The sky was clear with a few clouds, capturing the city's vibrant and hopeful atmosphere at the end of World War II. In 1960, New York City was densely developed with skyscrapers, including the Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, and the Seagram Building. The skyline featured a mix of residential, commercial, and public buildings. The population was diverse, including European immigrants, African Americans, Puerto Ricans, and newer immigrants from Asia and the Caribbean. The streets were busy with automobiles, buses, taxis, and pedestrians. Central Park and other green spaces provided recreational areas. The United Nations headquarters, completed in 1952, was a notable structure. The city had a vibrant cultural scene with theaters, jazz clubs, and museums, capturing the dynamic and bustling atmosphere of the era. In 1980, New York City was densely developed with skyscrapers, including the Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, and the World Trade Center towers. The skyline featured a mix of residential, commercial, and public buildings. The population was diverse, including long established communities of European descent, African Americans, Puerto Ricans, and newer immigrants from Asia, the Caribbean, and Latin America. The streets were busy with automobiles, buses, taxis, and pedestrians. Central Park and other green spaces provided recreational areas. The city had a vibrant cultural scene with theaters, music clubs, and art galleries, reflecting the dynamic and evolving atmosphere of the time.
That's about when I was born, so it'll be interesting to see how it evolved here. I actually saw it already, but show y'all how it evolved and makes sense then. Probably a next video on this, so go into the future here.
In 2001, New York City was densely developed with skyscrapers, including the Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, and the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. The skyline featured a mix of residential, commercial, and public buildings. The population was diverse, including long established communities of European descent, African Americans, Puerto Ricans, and immigrants from Asia, the Caribbean, Latin America, and the Middle East. The streets were busy with automobiles, buses, taxis, and pedestrians. Central Park and other green spaces provided recreational areas. The city had a vibrant cultural scene with theaters, music venues, and art galleries. The sky was clear with a few clouds, reflecting the city's dynamic atmosphere before the tragic events of September 11.
And here's where we are now. So this is current time.
In 2024, New York City is densely developed, with a mix of historic and modern skyscrapers, including One World Trade Center, the Empire State Building, and Hudson Yards. The skyline features a diverse array of residential, commercial, and public buildings. The population reflects a global mix of cultures, contributing to the city's vibrant and inclusive atmosphere. The streets are busy with automobiles, buses, pedestrians, and cyclists. Central Park and other green spaces provide essential recreational areas. Sustainability initiatives, such as bike lanes and electric vehicle charging stations, are visible throughout the city. The cultural scene remains dynamic with theaters, music venues, and art galleries, capturing the essence of modern New York City. The sky is clear with a few clouds, symbolizing a city that continues to thrive and innovate.
Okay, so that's the history of New York, and there are more details, but I thought that'd be kind of boring to read through the whole thing here, and I'll try to post a link to this chat when we're done in the description. So another thing that I found handy, let me show you this real quick. So I just asked ChatGPT for the timeline of events in New York. Actually, let's read this out loud for you guys too.
Here's a timeline of major historical events in New York. 1. 1609. Henry Hudson explores the area now known as New York Harbor and the Hudson River, claiming the region for the Dutch. 2. 1624. The Dutch establish a settlement at Fort Orange, present-day Albany, and begin the construction of New Amsterdam on Manhattan Island. 3. 1664. The British capture New Amsterdam from the Dutch and rename it New York in honor of the Duke of York. For 4. 1776. New York becomes a key battleground during the American Revolutionary War. The Battle of Long Island, also known as the Battle of Brooklyn, takes place. 789. New York City serves as the first capital of the United States. George Washington is inaugurated as the first president at Federal Hall on Wall Street. 1825. The Erie Canal is completed, linking the Great Lakes with the Atlantic Ocean via the Hudson River. This greatly enhances trade and the economy. 1898. The consolidation of New York City incorporates the boroughs of Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island into one city. 1931. The Empire State Building is completed, becoming the world's tallest building at the time. 1945. The United Nations headquarters is established in New York City. 2001. The September 11 attacks result in the destruction of the World Trade Center's Twin Towers, a pivotal moment in the city's history. These events mark significant milestones in New York's development from a colonial settlement to a major global metropolis.
Okay, thank you for watching. I guess it's my stomach telling me it's time to eat. Okay. Yep, thank you for watching. Have a good day, and stay tuned for the future in New York.